I will continue on making an investigator, and I'll kind of answer questions as and when they pop up. So you can see I've got all these random tables. So I'm going to just follow the steps. And I've got some handy character sheets that I've printed out, as you can see here. So I will be filling these out. All right, so names. I need D100. So these names are, I generated this list by going through and finding the most popular names. I think it was in America, so it's not kind of ideal to the region, but the most popular names from the 60s, the most popular baby names from the 60s. My thinking that most investigators are above 30 or older than 30 years old, so most of them would have been born in the 60s. Therefore, these are the names that they most likely would have in the 90s. Right. So we've got 52. That is Juan. And Juan's last name, that is 99. Very lucky. Wheeler. Okay, Juan Wheeler. Right, traits. Let's go 10. So that is, he has a round physique. Sorry, I'm assuming, I'm going to say he, him. So even though this is a game set in the 90s, it's a game that's made in 2025. So there's a section for pronouns. So his pronouns are his pronouns. His pronouns are he, him. Juan's pronouns are he, him. Okay. Round physique. And I'm just going to go through and roll one for each of the kind of... I'm pointing at it. That's not very useful. So these, each of these tables as a D10. Okay. He has a... Sorry, physique is... the first table is... failed at the first hurdle again. Okay. Although there could be a round physique, but it's actually... Oh no, it is round physique, yeah. So that's why I kind of got tripped up. So he's got a round physique with a round face. I probably will update that. Just because it's not that interesting to have round. I'm just making notes to myself. This is the beauty of having something in active development, is that I can be like, oh yeah, I need to fix that for the full book. And the PDF is always going to be the most up-to-date information. So for now, he's got a round physique with a round face. And he's got rosy skin. His eyes are shining. And his hair is shaved. Juan speaks in a blunt manner, and he is humble, yet cruel. Interesting. Maybe that stems from him speaking in a blunt manner, is that he's cruel. Maybe his bluntness can come across as cruelty. Someone said, love that you're taking us along with the development. Yeah, I always like to be transparent when I'm doing game development and stuff, just so that people can see what goes into it and, like, what mistakes I run into, and like stuff that you don't see. You can read through a book, 10 or 15 times, and you won't, like, you kind of start ignoring all the issues. But when you actually look to start playing it, or like you hit the right combination of things and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that, that's a bit redundant, or that's a duplication, that doesn't make sense, that sort of thing. It always happens. Okay, so those are the traits. Specialisms. I'm going to start off with being a profiler. So I'm going to tick that on the character sheet, if you can see that. We've got 2 sections for profiler and occultist. So when I do the full game, I'm going to redo the character sheets, because obviously there are going to be more specialisms. So I'll shift into profiler here, just so you can get an idea. These are the skills that a profiler has. Glimpse, that's see what the killer sees. And then there's also a profile skill. So essentially that means generating a profile using kind of the experience of a lifetime or a career of being a profiler or being an investigator. So you'll be able to draw out like, all right, this is kind of the situation of the murder. So looking at that and building a profile in your head, given all of the different variables, profile of like who the killer is likely to be, either like how old they are, how old they're likely to be, what race they are, living situation, that sort of thing. So this is where you'd be like, oh, it's a killer who lives alone, has like abandonment issues, or like has a van because they can move the body without being disturbed, that sort of thing. And where that information is gathered from when you use the profile skill is that's gathered from uh, the dossier. So the dossier of the killer, you can say, oh, this is the killer. You can pull out some information from that dossier after the profile. So you kind of use that skill, and then that will give you some of the information about the killer. So we've got some character touchstones here. Frank Black, Will Graham, Samantha Waters was from a show in the 90s called Profiler. It was on NBC. It was essentially like Millennium, except a bit more mainstream and a bit more like network TV. Although Millennium was on Fox, so, but that's kind of like, she was same kind of idea. Like she was a criminal profiler and she could see through the killer's eyes. Same kind of idea. It had its strengths and weaknesses. She worked with more of a team, whereas Frank Black is kind of more on his own. But it's an interesting, like another one of those situations where there's two things that are on at the same time that are very similar to each other that aren't really connected to each other, just like it's in the zeitgeist. Anyway, Samantha Waters was from the show Profiler. So for Profiler, you get a +2 to your mind, which is one of the stats. Right, let's go back here. So the equipment, it started off in development that because this is based on, it follows the kind of lineage of Into the Odd, Cairn, liminal horror, and this started off as a hack, more of a hack of liminal horror. So equipment inventory was more important. And at a certain point, I made the decision to say, inventory is not that important to this, like mechanically to this game. You don't need to worry about how much stuff you have on you, how much fatigue you take on, that sort of thing. You don't need to worry about that. It's more about investigation and kind of yourself. So there is still equipment, and that's something I'm going to expand on in the full game, having like investigator tools that you can use. But this is more of a flavor thing at the moment. So you don't have to worry about how much stuff you have on you. Obviously, within reason, you're not going to carry around an ATM, like an actual physical 400-pound ATM. But this is kind of stuff that's more thematic, speaks to more who the investigators are. So for Profiler, you carry around a photo of your connection, which is kind of an important part of your being, we'll get to later on. Painkillers for headaches, and latex gloves. So I'm going to write those down. And obviously, later on, there might be situations where, like, if you have a run-in with a killer and you escape like if you escape without being killed, maybe they'll take the photo of your connection, and that will be like kind of a thread that they'll learn more about you and kind of start stalking your connection, that sort of thing. All right, painkillers and latex gloves. And so this isn't, I should explain that this isn't a game that's, it isn't a procedural, it isn't a simulation. So you don't have to worry about saying, like, I put on my latex gloves while I do the investigation. It's assumed that you're just going to do that because you're a professional profiler. Like, you've been around enough that you know that you need to put on gloves. So it's not something that's going to catch you out if you're like, oh, I want to like pick this up and have a look at it. I'm not going to say, oh, you didn't wear your latex gloves. So that means the evidence is inadmissible, that sort of thing. there's a certain level of professionalism and capability that's assumed, unless obviously like some wardens might want to play with that and say, well, no, you do have to say that sort of thing. But kind of in my own head, you don't have to worry about that unless that becomes an enjoyable part of the kind of the whole system for you. My approach is do what works best for your table. I can set out some guidelines. This is kind of what I would do. But once you have it in your hands and once you start running it, you know, you can do whatever you want, basically. Make it your own. Okay, so I need to do the profiler psych profile now. So this is essentially gives you a little bit of an insight into the background of each investigator. So as always, you can roll on this table. You can make something up yourself if you have an idea of like a type of investigator that you want to play, but it isn't reflected here. Then absolutely go for it. If the warden's cool with that, then go for it. So I'm gonna roll on these tables. It's a d6. All right. So how did I become a profiler? What path did I take? So 5, sociology professor. Interesting. So I took 3 or 4 sociology classes in university. Intro to sociology, I did criminal justice and criminal justice system. So criminology and criminal justice. Partly because I was so interested in it because of stuff like this. One of them was around moral panics, which was really, really interesting. It was about the media and criminal justice. So the idea of like this comes up in Millennium in one of the episodes, and obviously if you're a role-playing fan, you'll be familiar with like the Satanic Panic in the 80s, which was a moral panic. Parents thought that playing Dungeons and Dragons would get their kids into Satanism and black magic, actual black magic, that sort of thing. And because it was overrepresented in the media, that became the dominant idea, or that kind of became like a viral fear of like parents worried that their kids would turn to Satanism if they played Dungeons and Dragons. So that was a really interesting class. Anyway, I digress. So what did I say? Sociology professor, right. That's what Juan was before he became a profiler. Why did he leave the agency? So as your profiler, the assumption is that you worked for the FBI or another kind of high-ranking government agency. Could be the RCMP in Canada, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So why did you leave the agency? Kind of shorthand for why did you stop being a cop? So for Juan, I delved too far into a cursed mind and it nearly broke me. So this goes along with the seeing what the killer sees, seeing through the killer's eyes. Maybe Juan at one point was on a difficult case and he pushed himself too far, and it kind of, like, as it says, it nearly broke him. So after that, he needed to take a step back. All right, and what is Juan's biggest regret? So that's a 3. My profile sent the wrong man to death row for 20 years. So profiles are not infallible. Could be that two killers will have exactly the same profile, or 2 people will have the same profile, but it doesn't mean that it's the right killer, the right person in that situation. So that's Juan's biggest regret. Could be tied into the broken mind or the cursed mind as well. Maybe he delved into the wrong mind and then kind of that threw him off. So his profile was off because of that. Or he made an assumption. Right, okay, so I've got a decent idea of Juan. So to kind of summarize his traits, because I didn't do that earlier. You have a round physique with a round face, rosy skin, shining eyes, and shaved hair. You speak in a blunt manner. You are humble yet cruel. Okay, psych profile, done. Right, so now I'm going to roll for connection, haven, and vehicle. So this is a D10 for connection. So as I mentioned earlier, a connection is kind of the person that keeps you grounded in like the normal world, like the world outside of your job, the world outside of Ouroboros. So your connection keeps you like I described it before as keeps you in the light, away from the darkness. So you need to rest and spend time regularly with your connection in order to kind of, specifically in this game, in order to restore your will. And we'll get to will in a second when it comes to stats. So yeah, connection is someone you spend time with in order to keep you grounded, to restore your will, and to kind of make you more of a human person, like return more to humanity. So I'm going to roll a d10 for that. 7. So colleague or comrade. Okay. So I'm going to say comrade, and this is my partner from the agency. This is where the names table comes in handy. So I'm going to re-roll a roll on that for the name of my colleague. So that is 12. That is Bruce, 95. Bruce Torres. Okay. Oops, that's my connection. Bruce was my colleague at the agency. And when I left, I'm going to say that Bruce retired shortly after, or left the agency shortly after. So he's a civilian now. He's not involved with Ouroboros. But he helps keep me grounded. Okay, next is Haven. So this is a place where you feel most at home. So it's not necessarily where you actually live, but it's a place where you spend time to kind of to unwind, to kind of let your mind rest, and like to become mechanically, it's to kind of restore your mind, any lost mind points, basically. So it's like, it's just a place to relax and rest, and where you feel most at home, where you can be most yourself. Right, D20 for this one. 18. A dead mall. Very interesting. So that is Haven. So dead malls aren't as prevalent in the 90s as they are now. So I'm going to assume that this is a... there was one where I lived in Edmonton for a while. Two malls right across the street from each other. One was kind of run down, older. Then the other one is new, all the new shops I went into. So the old one still had shops on the outside. Still had like big grocery stores, that sort of thing. But inside the actual mall, everything was shut down, and like still some food court shops, but pretty dead. That in that mall. So this is that type of mall is where Juan will go to kind of rest. Maybe he goes and has a hot dog from the one vendor that's still left. He goes, hangs out there with Bruce, has a coffee. Okay, vehicle. So D12. Break out the D12. All right, 10. So he's got a pickup truck. So if you've ever been to Alberta, you'll know that there's a lot of pickup trucks. There were a lot in the 90s as well. All right, pickup. I say Alberta because that's where I'm from, in Canada. Okay, so age. So for age, it's 30 plus 46. 16, so I'm 46 years old. Yeah, I didn't want to have any like 20-year-olds, because in order to be kind of recruited to Ouroboros, you have to have some life experience. Generally, you have to have been an agent, or you have to have been around for a while. So I wanted to have that reflected. Doesn't make any difference, just kind of flavor wise, I think it's more interesting. There we go. Now we roll stats. So this is what I was talking about earlier. So body, mind, and will. Body is strength, speed, and agility. Mind is reason, memory, focus. Will is belief, spirit, resolve. The most important one is will, because that manages stress and determines fracture, which I'll explain. So you'll want to have a high will, but any roll is interesting, really. Okay, so I'm going to roll. First roll is 8. Second is 10. And third is 13. So on the face of it, that is 8 body, 10 mind, 13 will. I think that sounds about right. With the profiler specialism, I get a bonus of 2 to my mind. So that takes it to 12. I'm not going to min-max. So 8 body, 12 mind, and 13 will. Yeah, so will is the stat. Every time you fail a save, you lose will. And that how much will you lose depends on what doom phase you're in. So if it's doom phase dawn, if you're in the first doom phase, you lose 1 point, all the way up to doom phase midnight, where you lose 4 will points. So that's why will is very important. So you can lose will quickly, but you can also restore will by spending time with your connection. So that's why that's kind of the in other Cairn and Into the Odd games, there's a stat that kind of fluctuates as you kind of go along and get in fights and that sort of thing. In Rune Cairn, it's resilience. So that's your ability to avoid damage in combat, or your ability to stay in the fight. So for Midnight of the Century, there's no combat, so it's going to be will. So that's kind of, you lose a lot of will, but you'll regain it by spending time with your connection. So for equipment, I also have a pager, notebook and pen, and a flashlight. Again, mostly for flavor, but the pager, that's how Ouroboros communicates with you. So if you weren't around in the 90s, or if you weren't old enough to kind of be aware of pagers, or if you haven't run across them on TV, it's just a little kind of device that would sit on your belt, or like you'd have it in your pocket, and you could get a message to that pager. So someone, if they wanted to page you, they would like call the number, and then punch in like a message, or punch in a phone number, and then that you'd get that message sent to your pager. So it could either be like punch in your phone number and like, oh, I need to call this person, or punch in like a prearranged code like danger 911, that sort of thing. It's strange because this is before text messaging, so you couldn't actually send a text message. Well, later on pagers you could, but kind of for the purpose of this, you could just send a number. So for when Ouroboros wants to get in contact with you, they'll page you 2000, and you know that that's Ouroboros, and you need to call the prearranged number to find out what they want, what they need. Right. Okay, so that is Juan Wheeler. So Juan Wheeler is 46 years old. He's a profiler. His connection is his colleague Bruce Torres. His haven is a dead mall. His vehicle is a pickup truck. He spends time with Bruce in the mall, having a hot dog and grabbing a coffee to unwind. He used to be a sociology professor before he became a profiler, and now he's working for Ouroboros. I think that's a fairly interesting character. I've got some hooks that I could have some interesting investigations with.